Well, good evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and it's been 185 days since the end of the disastrous 2019 season, and it's been a long, hot summer drought of footy, but the footy's back, and so too are the Demons, we hope. Joining me tonight is my co-host, Grapeviney, who's been slogging it out on the training track all pre-season with our new high-performance podcast manager, and he's ready for a bumper 2020 season of podcasting. Good evening, Grapeviney.
Good evening, Andy. You're right. I've been to hell and back over the summer, a little bit like the club, but I've had a documentary team following me the whole way through. So there's going to be a short 3-hour feature about the podcast, and that'll be premiering at the Sundance Film Festival later in the year, along with the MFC promo that we've seen. So looking forward to talking about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a bit later on in the show. And also joining us tonight, long-time Demonlander and new pre-season track watcher, our man on the outer, George. Good evening.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, Grapeviney. Good evening, everyone. And welcome to 220, as our coach keeps calling it. I haven't had as long a pre-season as what Grapeviney has, so I'll be interested to hear about that.
And we love hearing from Demonlanders and fans of the show. So if you'd like to join us on our program tonight to discuss any of the topics that we're going to talk about, and there's lots to talk about, you can do that by giving us a call on 03 9016 3666. That's 03 9016 3666. Or you can Skype us at Demonland31. If you're listening to the show live, come join us in the chat room where you can ask us questions. You can post comments. You can do that if you don't want to give us a call. That's at demonland.com/podcast. If you're listening to this at your leisure via SoundCloud on demonland.com or via Apple or an Android podcasting app, be sure to subscribe to the new podcast to receive it when the new show drops. Leave us a favourable review. It does help more people find us. We're also on Spotify, so you can get the show that way. Go to demonland.com to find the preferred links to a method of listening. You can also follow us 31 or on YouTube. Just search for Demonland Podcast. If you love talking about the Ds 24/7 like we do, about everything that goes on. Fellas, we're back. It's a new season. Yeah, it was great to be watching the footy. Did either of you boys head out to
against Hawthorn next in the week after? So,
did you say you're not going to Tasmania?
No. Not for a practice match.
No. My notes that I've got for the show just seized up, and as we speak. But I think we need to preface. Everything that we talk about in regards to the game this week, with the thought that, it was a practice match. We're well aware of that. So, with that, games results in pre-season games don't necessarily translate into the season proper. And, I can't speak for you guys, but we also need to take into account the opposition, who, in my opinion, are doing an on-the-fly rebuild after mass exodus of players. They got a new coach, and a couple of their star players were rested after half-time. But taking all that into account, there was a lot to like what we saw, and the number one thing that I loved seeing was Christian unleashed. What were your thoughts on track, Grapeviney?
And a whopping 27 of them are contested. And the thing that impressed me about many of those touches is that they were quality disposals. So I didn't see his disposal efficiency, but I'm guessing it would have been quite high. So I think he got real value for a lot of those touches. And it was the kind of track that I suppose we've seen glimpses of, but certainly haven't seen 4 quarters like that. And you got the feeling that it wasn't just a day out in a practice match. You got the feeling that, well, I certainly did watching him anyway, that he's perhaps going to play at a new level this year, and that, what we saw on the weekend, will sort of be the mark going forward.
Yeah, he was a clear standout in the game. He seemed to have the ball on a string. He was an absolute beast, bursting through pack off with the don't argues. He was sidestepping. His effort,
clearances, tackles, inside 50s, he had the whole gamut.
Yeah, so you mentioned 38 hopping, 27 contested, 4 marks, 7 tackles, 3 goals. Could have easily been 4 goals. Someone on Demon mentioned that he's never had more than 30 possessions in a game. George, do you know if I'm right by saying that? Sorry, it has. Sorry, George, I disconnected the channel you were on, but you should be back now.
Yeah, I'm right. I don't know whether I didn't hear any of Grapevine's response, but you're obviously talking about a tracker. Yes, I think it was a great performance and was the first time he went over 30 possessions. I think we're seeing the coaching staff putting him in a role where he is going to get 30 possessions. Previously, he's been more of a half-forward sort of player with occasional stints through the middle, but we're going to see a lot more of him now that I think he's the right type of condition, playing more and more and more through the midfield. And I think we've got a very good glimpse of how good he can be in those roles. He's just built for it. So we've got a lot to look forward to, I think, in the coming season.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, not taking anything away from his performance, but it didn't appear that they put a hard tag on him, for a pre-season. But hopefully, it translate to the season ahead, and it is that breakout that we've been, sort of waiting for with track.
Yeah, and that's certainly the case. I don't think Adelaide are going to be much top, quite frankly, this year. They lost 6 very good players, I think it was in total. They've also lost the coach, so their team were a whole stack of young kids and rookies, which is what pre-season games can be about. What they probably, but I don't think Adelaide are going to be anything more than a bottom 4 side. But still, you're still going to beat them, and we beat them by 5 goals. I think the other good thing to get out of this game was we had a full team available. We had guys on the emergency list who would have been playing at this time last year in a practice match, and I suspect we'll see them firstly at North Melbourne this week and then in the Hawthorn game. But it's nice to be able to put 22 players on the field, and that 22 players didn't include May, Brayshaw and Fritsch, who you'd always put in those in that first 22 in any case. So good signs first up, but we'll see if we can build on it from here.
And the other important thing on top of putting out a very strong team is that those players finish the game really strongly. And yes, Adelaide sort of might have didn't finish too well, but we looked to be extremely fit at the end, still tackling very hard, good pressure in the final quarter. And I thought, when it got to sort of 3/4 time, and I knew that they were kicking with the wind, you can see the difference, in the fitness base between last year and this.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of players I'll mention. I'll go through them sort of one by one. Lever, early on, he showed exactly what we traded, hard for. His intercept marking was solid, and now with a full pre-season under his belt and Stephen May to come back in the side by his side, I'm very excited about the prospects. Those intercept marks were just were fantastic.
Yeah, and people forget that in the weeks leading up to his knee, he was playing really, really good football, and he was becoming, dominating player in the back line. So I've never had any doubts that he's going to return to that. And as you say, his form very early on was very encouraging.
The next player I've got on my list, Jonesy. Who said Jonesy was finished? There was a lot to like about his game. He had 16 possessions in the 3 quarters that he was on the ground. Both those 3 goals were very handy, and I'm just wondering what Jones's best role is. It's fair to say he probably won't have much midfield time, and will probably play a floating role. We appear to have the wings covered now, and I'm happy with our setup in the back line. So I'd like to see him play across half forward a bit because he can find the goals, as we saw. But in any event, the reports of his demise have been greatly exaggerated.
Indeed, I think Jonesy will be. This is just my opinion. I think he will still remain a midfielder, but playing off the bench. I think the difficulty when you start putting names into slots in the side, you find that the half back line and the half forward line seem to be full. So at this stage in his career, I think we'll start to use it and probably see a lot more Jones as an impact player in the same way that he was in this game. Just comes off the bench, runs through the middle, kicks the goal, gets the possession. He's been a midfielder all his life. I think it's a bit hard to use an old adage to teach an old dog new tricks. But at the moment, he's looking in fantastic form, apart from getting that knock on the shin that he did on the weekend.
Was he starting at half back and sort of running off the half back line? I mean, as George says, it doesn't really matter because once rotations and things, everyone gets mixed up. But I thought he was actually starting at half back, and it was part of that sort of defensive wall that ended up across half forward, keeping the ball in and kicking goals. Yeah,
I think so. I think he was started there, but he was sort of just roaming everywhere. No one seemed to be ever on him, and that's fine. If teams want to take him lightly, then he'll do what he does best and pop up for a couple of goals. Let's talk key forwards. I was quite impressed by Mitch Brown's first up performance for the D's. Considering we got him for bargain basement prices, he provided a great target up forward. Someone on Demonland mentioned that he fills the void left by Peterson, and I was a big fan of Peterson. But I think he has the potential to be more damaging on the scoreboard. He would have led our goal kicking last year, but then again, had he played in our team, he probably wouldn't have kicked that many goals. He's going to command a tall, strong backman and will either provide a target or he'll be the foil for T-Mac or Weed or both. Kick 3 goals too, should have been four goals. And if he can kick 1, 2, 3 goals a game, then he's more than steak knives. And the question I'll also put to you guys, and maybe George, you can start, does he play round 1?
That's a really difficult question, isn't it? It depends on where Wiedemann's being played, I think, but I can certainly see a role for him throughout the whole season. At some stage, people are going to tire and people are going to get injuries. It's nice to have someone like Brown who's tall, will take a bit and play as a forward. Certainly going back to our situation last year where we had Tommy Mack was injured at various times. Wiedemann was injured at various times. We had no one else. And again, in that role that Pedersen used to be able to fill, I think Brown will do that very, very nicely. He has this habit of being able to get out in the back, and there's been some criticism about him playing in that sort of style. But he gets out there. He seems to be just one of those people that's invisible and then pops up and kicks a goal or 2 or 3 here or there. And I think he'll be a great addition to the side. But I don't know that we'll have a spot for him in round 1. But as the season progresses, I think we'll see more and more of him.
Great, Viney.
Look, I sort of agree with George that in part it's going to depend on how Weed goes in the coming games in the lead up to round 1 and how the coach sees his role. But I could, if Weed doesn't, if Weed struggles in the coming weeks, then I could easily see Brown starting in round 1. Absolutely. And I think he is an important addition to the list, even if he doesn't play every game. He's got an important role to play.
The other one he might fill a gap for is Melcham at the moment. I don't know that he was particularly telling on the weekend. He probably needs a couple of runs. He's been out for little bits and pieces during the pre-season. So if Melcham's not up to the standard they require, I think Brown could probably fill that role, probably slightly different role, but again, he's a body that can just slot in there which we certainly didn't have available to us last year.
It's going to be interesting whether Weed continues rucking in Gawn's absence, because that's going to deprive him of the chance to show his stuff up forward. So, interesting times.
Before we talk about the Weed, we'll talk about our other key forward in T-Mac. I hardly noticed that he was even playing in the first half, but boy, did he arrive after half-time, and he displayed some of that form from 2018 and that late in 2019 prior to his season-ending knee injury. That's the T-Mac we want to see, and his quiet first half could have been due to the niggly injuries that he sort of had in the weeks leading up to this match. He probably just needed time to brush off the cobwebs, but I think he also bobbed up for 3 goals, and he's got a very straight kick when he's kicking for goal, and that's the T-Mac we want.
Yeah, and the other good thing is that he was playing on Talia, who is Adelaide's very experienced and number one backman. So it's not surprising that he might have been quiet for a period of time, but to actually overcome that is a very good sign. It'll put him in good stead for the remainder of the season. If he was playing against some of their sort of fill-in rookie new recruit type players, you would expect better. But Talia's a seriously good backman for Adelaide.
Well, we may as well talk the Weed now. Obviously, he played in the ruck out of necessity with both Gawn and Bruce injured on the sidelines. I thought he performed quite admirably in the ruck against an actual ruckman. Weed's only 196 centimetres. He is a forward. He's not a ruck. He had to ruck virtually the whole game against a 202 centimetre genuine ruckman. He did enough to negate his opponent, and considering we were smashed in the hitouts, I think it was 55-26. It certainly didn't have that Gulf didn't have an impact on the match. Weed racked up 20 disposals, which is good for a ruckman. But the one aspect of Weed's game that I was really disappointed with, and it's a frustration that I've had with him, with the exception of those couple of finals games in 2018, it's his inability to clunk those marks. There were a few drop marks on the wings that Maxi would have clunked as a ruckman sort of down the wing. And I know that he was playing out of position, but he really should be taking those marks. And I'm not bashing Weed here. If he'd clunked those 3 or 4 marks when he did have first hands on the ball, his game would have gone from good to very good or even great. Am I being too harsh on him?
I think that's a pretty fair summation of the weekend. As you say, I think if he'd taken those marks, and he should be, because he's getting in the right positions, and they're drop marks. So it separates a decent game from a very, very good game.
It's a pretty hard ask for him, given his age. I mean, he's not a classic type of ruckman, and he's a fill-in effectively for us. But this was a practice match. I suppose it gives us the opportunity to look at whether Wiedemann will fill that role, assuming Max or Bruce comes back at some stage, Max as soon as possible, who's going to play the backup ruck role during the season. It'll be interesting whether they use Tomlinson like he was used at GWS, or whether even Brown can come in and fill that role to a certain extent. But yeah, for a young guy like Wiedemann compared to Tomlinson and Brown, who've got a lot of experience behind them and probably got bigger bodies at the moment, to ruck all day, it's not surprising that he just doesn't quite get there at the moment. However, that's been seen on a number of occasions. So I suppose the question mark's still out on him. I'd prefer during the practice matches that he actually plays his role, which is somewhere up forward. Let's have a look at him there instead of filling a filler role at the moment full time.
Yeah, and look, it was just bad luck. Maxi going down and Bruce going down at the same time. We had to throw him there, and unfortunately he doesn't get to play in the position that he's been picked for. So, look, I actually heard that Maxi might play a little bit this coming Friday, like just a couple of couple of minutes. He actually said that to me the other day. But I think he'll definitely play in Tasmania. Might be on limited minutes, but I've got no doubt he'll be back in round one. So we'll see where the Weed plays come round one. But you, as you said, you want him to be playing, practice matches in the position he's meant to be in. Vandenberg.
Going to be an interesting selection dilemma if he only gets the one shot up forward before round one, whether they go with Brown or Wiedemann.
I guess it'll all depend on what Brown does in the coming games. If he's kicking goals, then and taking marks and kicking goals, then you sort of got to go with him. But time will tell. Vandenberg, it's great to see him back.
Yes.
I think he only played 70% game time. He's still racked up 19 possessions. And no, how many possessions did he get, actually? I had 19 on here, but that sounds high. I don't know.
19 tackles, maybe.
No, yeah. I'll look that up in a sec. But, boy, did I and Adelaide feel every one of his 5 tackles. Let's hope he gets through this year unscathed because, boy, does he deserve a turn of good luck. And it's like having a new recruit who's a bull and will put genuine fear into the opposition.
It's good to see that he felt good after the game, so no issues, which is, good news. And it's interesting, even listening to the commentary, he's played so little football, and yet even the commentators are aware of the reputation of this guy and how dangerous he is if he gets hold of you when you've got the ball. Fingers crossed that it keeps going well for him.
Yeah, I think the other thing with Vandenberg and his tackles was they're not the midfield type tackles where you're tackling someone who's basically standing right next to you. There was the rundown tackles that just guys who thought they'd it was almost a repeat of the Geelong final. Guys who thought they'd got away from Vandenberg and took that 1 or 2 steps too further and they were just buried. It was great for him, great for his confidence. I think it's interesting also listening to the post-match interview with him where he said basically he's training once a week to try and manage his foot situation. So whatever they're doing, they're doing it right because if he's on the ground, we are a completely different side.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
He did have 19 possessions. So that's fantastic from him. That's sort of what you want. And if he's crunching blokes and chasing them down, that's what you want. Let's talk our new blokes. Langdon, there's a lot to like about his game. He's quick. He provides, the run and carry on the wing that we've been dying for. He runs hard. He finds spaces. He also had 19 possessions. He had a goal as well. You boys happy with that pickup?
I'll start then. Very happy with Langdon. The other thing that I think is great for us in terms of Langdon is, as far as I know, he has been to every single pre-season training session, hasn't missed anything, hasn't been in rehab groups, and he has this ability to just sit out on the wing and be the go-to man, both from a defensive aspect and from an attacking aspect as well. I think he is exactly what we needed from last season. I think we tried 16 players in the wing role last year. He's the man who's got it cemented well and truly, as far as I'm concerned. He's a great pickup.
Yeah, I mean the way he played on the weekend was exactly what was missing last year, and it's the missing link basically between the forward and the back and the forward half. So that's exactly what we recruited him for. The coaches would have been very, very happy.
The other bloke on the other wing, Adam Tomlinson, 16 disposals and 8 marks. He's a big boy. He provides a marking target up and down the wing. It's important to note that he didn't start training full-time with the boys until a couple of weeks ago, so I expect that he will continue to improve and he'll gel with his teammates as the season wears on. Both of them great acquisitions by the club. It's great that they went out and hunted a position that we really need filled. And I'll no doubt rectify that massive hole that we've had in those positions.
Yeah, Tomlinson went okay given the very limited preparation he's had. So, not a bad start from him either.
Yeah, 8 marks from a wingman's great, and it's going to be great when we're kicking out. To have that other target, to have maybe Max on one side or him on another. What we need.
Yeah, and the good thing about Tomlinson, I think he's played 120 games already. So we're fortunate, even though he was in the rehab group up until a couple of weeks ago, he still has that underlying fitness level. He is able to be able to be slotted in as of round one or in these games already. So that's great from us. But as you just pointed out, having a tall, I think he's 190 plus centimetres, Tomlinson on one wing, it creates absolute headaches for the opposition, particularly at kick out. Which side do they kick it to? If you like Andy just suggested, you've got Gawn sitting down one side, Tomlinson down the other. Where do you go? There's not going to be any easy outs like teams found against us last year if you've got these guys being both on the field.
Next new guy, Cozzy. What an excitement machine. I don't think I'm going out of a limb saying that he's going to be a very, very exciting player. He's going to be dangerous around goals. He hunts the ball. He hunts the opposition. His forward pressure is exactly what we've been, screaming for in a small forward. 5 tackles from the kid. He only had 6 posies, but kicked a great goal. There's a lot more to come from him. I will also say, there was this one point. It was right at the beginning of the game. He was involved it was in our back pocket. He was involved in he was chasing and he tackled a guy. Then the ball went to our forward line on the opposite corner of the ground, where Cozzy chased several players through a handball chain before forcing the stoppage. And I can't remember if he tackled the guy in play or over the line. And it took me a while to realise that he'd been on the opposite side of the ground from the beginning of that passage. It's great work ethic from him.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he doesn't start round one. Limited fitness, and the coaches would probably expect even limited impact. But I think the impact is going to be enough to warrant a spot in the team. Let's face it, no one else can play that role. And, I reckon half a dozen touches from Cozzy will be enough to earn him a spot, as I say.
Yeah, Andy, if you're out on a limb with him, I'm sitting further out on that and the leaves and the twigs in the end with this guy. I've been fortunate to go down to a few training sessions and see him in action. It is just something to really behold. They run exercises at the training sessions, a bit like the old touch football type of thing, or the handball from end to end sort of game. He just doesn't get caught. Nobody gets within cooey of him. He just runs around players. Players can't tackle him. He is something to behold. There was a marking contest that I saw him in about 2 weeks ago at training. I don't know where he came from in the marking contest, but he was horizontal across this pack and took it well above guys who are twice his height. He is going to be one hell of an excitement machine. I'd love to see him play round one. I think he will, simply because we don't, as Grapevine said, there's no one else to fill the role at the moment. I don't think he will last because his fitness levels of, he's a first-year player. First up, it'll be a big call, but I think the impact that he'll have on a game at the right time is going to be quite amazing. He's reminiscent exactly of Cyril Rioli's and Aaron Davies and those sort of players who can do just miraculous things at will. And the other thing, and to worship on the site has just and he's got a turbo button. You just think at times that he's just going through the motions, and all of a sudden he just goes from nowhere, hits players, tackles players. He's really going to be something to behold. I think the fans will get really excited when they see him in action.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the prospect of a full MCG, him getting the ball and the crowd just getting a light. And, it's, that limb is there.
Whole tree's going to break.
The other new recruit we had, Luke Jackson. He's got a very nice leap. I don't know if you saw that post that the D's put up on social media. He was up against a very tall ruckman, and he was about 3 feet higher than the guy, if not further. He didn't
it was
really
reminiscent of Jeff White a bit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which someone did comment on the site. But yes, just an incredible picture. Exciting picture.
He didn't really get amongst it. He only had a couple of touches. I like that he was given some time in the midfield as a midfielder. But he had to put on a number of hats on the day with his time as a forward. He spent some time in the ruck. That little bit of time he spent in the midfield, that's a lot to put on an 18-year-old. So there's a lot more to come from him. I wouldn't be too worried. I'm not sure if you heard the commentary. Gerard Healy was actually quite harsh on his critique of Jackson, and for an 18-year-old kid, that's a lot of expectations to put on him. He's not coming into the team as the great white hope or anything like that, like when we had Jack Watts come into the team. So I thought that was quite unnecessary from Healy.
So did he only finish with 2 touches? Because I actually noticed him quite a bit more than that. And although he didn't seem to get a lot of the footy, he seemed to at least be around the footy quite a bit, which I thought was promising enough for me anyway.
Just hung up on George by accident, so I'm just getting you back. I'm a little rusty. This is my practice game for the season. George, have I got you back? Sorry, I hung up on you by accident. I just said to Grapevine, this is my practice match for the year. I'm a little bit rusty. Lost my notes early on. I'm back. All right.
We can still talk about Jackson though.
Yes, go for it.
Again, I've seen a bit of him at training. He's a player that you really don't know where he's going to finish. Surprisingly, he's 198 centimetres, so he's big enough to do rucking. He's built and operates and moves like Patrick Cripps through the midfield. He can play midfield. He can play forward. He's just a great asset that I think, again, like Cozzy, will be really exciting when he does get that opportunity. But he still is only 18, and to fill any of these roles like a midfield or a serious forward or a ruck, he needs the body development to be able to do that. It'd be sad to throw him in and then get smashed by the bigger bodies that operate in all of those roles. But boy, he's again is going to be something pretty special when we use him to full advantage.
To answer your question, Grapevine, he had 5 possessions, 1 kick and 4 handballs. He had 5 hit-outs as well.
Yep. I was happy.
Yeah. Harmsy has been training all summer with the defenders. George, you can attest to that. You've been down to quite a few sessions. It's obvious they want to turn him into a rebound defender. It wasn't his best game of footy. I think that experiment is worth persisting with. Some of the best games he's played is when he's been given a tagging job. Many times has not only negated his opponent, but he's managed to find the ball a lot himself. But obviously the footy department has new plans for him, and I'm all for that out-of-the-box thinking, because if it works, those type of things help you get to September and further. So thoughts on Harmsy, Grapevine?
Look, it's, it's interesting to take him out of the midfield, and I suppose in his place we've seen Petraka. So, Harms gave a lot when he was in the middle, but, does Tracker sort of leap forward in the, in the starting midfield lineup? Not sure. Not convinced necessarily with the experiment, but... Look, the more players that you've got to run through the middle anyway, the better. So, interesting to see where it goes.
George?
I'd come up from this a little bit differently. I don't think we'll see Harms disappear from the middle. I think this is more a case of teaching Harms a defensive role, because he has never played in the back line effectively in his career to date. What that enables the coaches to be able to do is further rotate through the roles on the field, as opposed to just when Harms would come on and off the field, it'd be onto the bench, on and back. Now, if you teach him the defensive roles, that gives you another option to rotate, which is part of the way the game's played these days. While we've moved Petrarca into the middle more so from the forward line, he already knew how to play the forward type roles, but it's a bit harder to teach people the defensive type roles, I think. So this just gives us another arrow in the quiver for rotations through the middle, but also gives us the opportunity when people like Salem or need a break during the game, then you can slide a Harms back in to fill the role. So I don't think we'll see him disappear from the middle. He's too good at that at the moment. But it's just going to be more options for us.
Some honourable mentions from the game. I was happy with Viney's game. 25 possession, 9 bone-crunching tackles. Oliver was Oliver. I'd still prefer he kicked the ball sometimes. Sparrow impressed me, 17 possessions and a goal. There's a lot to like about that kid. Lockhart also impressed me in the back line. He takes a very strong overhead mark for a smaller guy. Boys, I'll start with maybe Great Viney. Who are your honourable mentions, including the guys I've mentioned?
I'd agree with most of those. And, Sparrow. And look, Lockhart I thought showed real promise last year. So I'm not surprised that he played a pretty good game on the weekend, and he's going to be in the mix for quite possibly for round one and going forward, I think. So I'd agree with those assessments, though.
George?
Yeah, I think we're our cup might be overflowing a little bit in this sense. We're one of the good things that the club didn't do last year was throw these type of players in when we were absolutely desperate for Warriors on the field, and we didn't inhibit their development. And now all of a sudden, people like Lockhart and Sparrow and Chandler, who despite unfortunately was injured, and people like Hoare are all sitting at the fringes, available to go. If and when needed more so. We didn't kill them last year when in previous years for the footy club. That's exactly what we've done. We throw these young kids in and seen them not develop to the same extent. I think the club's done a great job to be able to get these guys in, and now they can fill a hole or a role when needed. So honourable mentions definitely to them. I think we'll see a few more of them in the practice match this weekend and the subsequent game against Hawthorn.
All right, we've got a caller on the line. Good evening. Welcome to the Demonland podcast. Who am I talking to?
Good evening, fellas. It's Binman.
Oh, Binman, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, good. Looking forward to a good season, and it's a much better start than the corresponding game to this one last year at Casey. It was a horror, that game. Smith was injured, May got reported, and we just looked off in that game right from the beginning. And it's a much different vibe this year, isn't it?
It certainly is, but that actually wasn't the corresponding game. I think we played Richmond first up, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, yep.
But still, yes, it is. We were overrun in both of those games. So yeah.
Were you there on the weekend, Binman?
No, I didn't make it out there. I watched it on KO. I enjoyed it, but I'm going on Friday actually, so I thought I'd best call so we win the game on Friday, because I want to start the season as I mean to go on.
I think we should all temper our expectations for Friday's game. I believe that this is what I heard, is it's going to be pretty much an under-23s team with probably a smattering of more senior blokes depending on who needs the run. So we're going to go in with a very young and inexperienced team, and I'm not sure whether North are going to be doing the same thing or not. They might be resting a few blokes. I know they've got some playing in the Bushfire Appeal State of Origin game. So yeah, I temper our expectations on that one, but it'd be good to see them get up for a win. But it's a practice match in the end.
It gives me an out then, and that's good. Actually, I read that under 23s, and in some ways but it's actually great because practice games give you a chance to look at those players. I don't get to the VFL games, so to see this Sparrow, I mean, I've seen a little bit of him, but James Jordan and those sorts of players that you don't really see or hear much about, and Cozzy and Jackson and even Rivers have jumped ahead of them already in sort of my consciousness and other fans' consciousness. But there's a bunch of those players. Bedford is another one who I think are, they're the sorts of players that they're more than depth, but they're taking 2 or 3 years to come through.
There was also Hunt and Hall also didn't get a call up, and last year they were sort of staples in the team. So I guess that it does show we've got a healthy list when guys who were getting a regular game and playing well. I mean, Hunt was our second leading goal kicker last year. Hall was very, his performances were very commendable last year. Despite the year that we had. So, with guys like that not being able to just walk into a team, it's actually a good thing.
It's terrific. The reason I called actually was just to agree with Grapevine here around Lockhart. I was surprised to read that he's been training with the backs, and I sort of had him in my mind as a small forward, and particularly as we struggle with that position. But I thought he was excellent, and he makes good decisions. But he's a really good kick. He's a neat kick. A couple of times he got us out of trouble with his kicking. And I think that, having reliable kicks back there is so critical. You really need to, Jetta's good kick, McDonald's a good kick. I couldn't have been more impressed, actually. And I have him locked in now for round 1 in that position, which I wouldn't have thought, a few weeks ago.
Yep, interesting. Yeah.
I agree. Anything else, Big Man?
Just the other thing I wanted to sort of, I guess, put on the agenda is I'm really impressed with a lot of the things the club's been doing really since about, the mid-season review last year. They've got a lot of things right, I think, in terms of just the early decisions to get the coaching situation sorted out, to bring in Burgess, to bring in the others that they brought in. And then I think they made really brave calls at selection in terms of taking Cozzy at 12. And, they clearly wanted Jackson, which was evident from that the video series. And, I think that they've managed the narrative pretty well, given how bad our season was last year. And, they've got a lot of media. For a team that finished 17th, we've got our fair share of media, not all positive, but I think they've done a lot of things right. And obviously it's a huge benefit being fit and having a good core. But, I think credit where credit's due for the club around getting those things right. Yeah,
I agree with that. Club was in a pretty difficult position when you consider finishing 17th, and when you take that into account, the public face of it all looks pretty good, and I suspect that there's substance behind the sizzle too. So let's wait and see.
You mentioned, and I'll bring this up while you're still on the line, you mentioned the Darren Burgess. So, one of the likes I had about this game was that we ran the game out really, really well. Definitely showed signs of improved fitness, and if this elite fitness translate into the season proper and goes deep into the year, that will be our making. Obviously, injuries notwithstanding. I think we owe a big thanks to Darren Burgess. In fact, I think a whole lot of Demonlanders were actually looking for Burgess at the family day the other day because everyone wanted his autograph. And and we're going to talk about the series a bit later, the doco series that they've been putting on, and just seeing the players being put through their paces. It's been exhausting just watching it, and it's translated on the field the other day.
Wasn't it interesting, Andy, that in that one of those docos, I can't remember, maybe the first one, where Burgess stood in front of the group and said, today you're going to be doing, I can't remember the numbers, 29 kilometres or something at this session, and last year nobody did anything like that ever for the whole pre-season. It's just chalk and cheese what he's done and what he's put the people through. He probably had a bit more subject matter to work with than last year, but the fact that he's put so much effort into it, and the players have as well, is a real credit to him.
A couple of comments about Burgess. I mean, obviously he's the real deal in terms of his role, but I think you might have put Andy on a comment about a reflection from the second Hell and Back video where he talked about we a lot.
Yep.
And I thought the same thing. It just really, he's sort of, the way he's bought in, and obviously perhaps that's his style. But just the other thing I'd sort of hate for, he's obviously terrific, and we've had a good run with, I don't think we had more than maybe one or two post-season surgeries, but I'd hate for Misson to sort of, I think there was a lot of ill-informed comment about Misson on Demonland and his ability, and I think, I think his legacy, it would be unfair on him to be tarnished by, how good Burgess is and the luck that he's had in terms of not having surgeries.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that point you made, that I had mentioned about the we, I absolutely love that, because he was talking about we, just not in the present tense, as in we now. Obviously he's an employee of the club, but he was talking about we, referring to last year. When he could have easily passed the buck and said they. When referring to some of the stuff that happened last year, which wasn't in all the fault of as you said, to the elite performance past performance managers, but I really like that, because he didn't have any dog in the fight last year, but he's taking on sort of that not responsibility, but talking about it in that tense. So yeah, I really like what I'm hearing from him. So let's hope it translates into the season.
The other interesting thing about Burgess that I've seen at the training sessions and the way he runs it is that he makes it interesting for the players. Anybody can make go and do 100 hundreds, run around the tan. Let's do some more laps, all that sort of thing. The exercises that he set, and boy, they absolutely run them until they quite literally drop, are all football based in a way. There's these handball drills that go back and forth, and then all of a sudden you go into, there's no rests between what each of the exercises that he puts up for it. It's quite remarkable to watch how it's integrated into actually what players do when they're actually on the football field. So they might be dead dog tired, but they're not bored at doing, another 100 metres or another 50 metres or another run around the tan. So that keeps people's interest, and pre-season's a pretty long time for these guys.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I heard him interviewed, and I forget what it was on, but he was talking about the difference between soccer, for instance, and football, and part of his philosophy is that lots of repeat sprints in football, and for training, just the way they need to run. They cover a lot of ground, but a lot of it is short burst running, and you'd know better than me, George, in terms of the training scene. You've seen a bit, but my understanding is, from what I've read on Demonland, is that a fair bit of it's had the footy in hand, and trying to simulate sort of match conditions a little bit with some of those running patterns and things.
That's exactly the case, particularly that sort of handball drill where three players are in the middle trying to tackle you, and you've got to get through them. It's short, it's quick. You get to the other end, and then you turn around and you do it again. So that's exactly the sort of stuff that he's implemented. It's great to see.
There was another thing that I noticed when I was at training a couple of times where they would sort of be training in, sort of smaller groups and doing, the handballing drills, kicking drills, whatever they're doing. But they'd send a group of about, 5 or 6 or more to the side and have to do grappling and leapfrogging and all these weird things. But it was just keeping them moving and sort of exhausting them only to put them back out there into the handballing and kicking drills when they were absolutely spent. And that's definitely going to have an impact come game day.
Mm.
Big man, if you want to stay on the line, you're more than welcome to. It's up to you. So we'll keep going. If you want to stay on, stay on.
Happy to, thank you.
So the other likes I've got is the fact that we've got Gawn, May, Brayshaw and Fritsch to come back. And, obviously having the full-time ruckman back in the team is going to have an impact as well as having May, a fit May in the back line. Be great. Concerns from the day. It wasn't all roses all day. I think a bit of a worry was still our movement inside 50 was still very much the chaos ball, which worked for us in 2018. Not so much last year, but for reason the reasons for 2019 have been well documented. I thought we overused the ball, and sometimes we gave off that one handball too many. But to be fair, as the first game back under genuine pressure, Grapevine, was that a concern for you?
Only in part. I thought we were actually quite a bit better at it than we were for the most part last year. So I think there were periods where we did lower our eyes a bit and move the ball quite well in the forward 50. But, yep, you're right. There were a few, long bombs which didn't amount to too much. So, again, it's, got a new forward line working there. New players in terms of Brown being in. So, it'll take some time to gel, or a little bit of time to gel. So I wasn't overly concerned about it, no, when you sort of take that into account.
Yeah, we did bomb it in a few times, and that was disappointing to me because I thought we would lower the eyes a bit more. But early, I think it improved as the game sort of went on, and sort of T-Mac sort of started playing a bit better as well. Yeah.
And the other thing is the forward line wouldn't be necessarily the best one that you'd put in as of round one. Without Wiedemann playing up forward and also Fritsch not there as well. So when the mids come out and they're looking for someone, and there's no one there because there's actually only T-Mac and Brown, it's just about the options. So it's a practice match. It's a first run. Let's see what the forward line looks like and the options available to the mids when we've got a full contingent sitting out there, hopefully creating hell for the opposition.
Yeah, Fritsch adds a real other go, and Melksham, of course, one-on-one is very strong too. Now, he didn't have a great game on the weekend, but there's really enough diversity in the forward line that we should be a threat of high scoring consistently.
When the ball comes out of our inside 50, our defensive transition is still a bit of a worry for me. We saw this a lot last year, and even in 2018, opposition teams, and the Crows did this a number of times, were just moving the ball way too easily and made us pay. Hopefully this can continue to be worked on throughout the remaining preseason, but it was still concerning that there was happening. But I guess you can't stop everything. Teams are going to score.
But they didn't get any goals over the back, and I think that when we pushed, the commentators made note of it. We had our defensive line pushed up pretty high, which is why you had Jones kicking from 50, 60 metres on a couple of occasions. He was playing, Greg Burney was correct before, he was playing half-back flank for the whole match, is my understanding. And they were pushing up hard. But they had their zone worked out pretty well, I reckon. They didn't get those. The real worry for us was when you get those goals that it's end-to-end tic-tacking over the top and they're running into an open goal. None of that happened. And, we kept them to a relatively low score. So particularly in the second half, I thought, our defensive structure was pretty good, actually.
Yep.
I was just playing devil's advocate there because perhaps Adelaide aren't such a good team. So we'll see what happens when we come up against some decent opposition. I think we also still need to work on sticking tackles. It's been a bit of a bugbear of mine for a while. Not everyone's a culprit, as we have some tackling beasts in the team, but opposition seem to sometimes brush past a lot of our players, and we just put out that one arm and they run straight through.
My major concern for the team has sort of been the case for the last few years is our kicking skills. Is we still don't, even Langdon, your comments before were spot on in terms of he's a fantastic recruit, but he's not a great kick. Technically, he's not fantastic. That kick from Salem to Tom McDonald and the kick from Melksham to Tom McDonald, just for both the ones that set McDonald up for a goal, just reinforced to me how important that sort of skilled kicking is, and sort of lead me to thinking how brilliant it would be to get Bennell in that team.
Well, that was my next point, the disposal efficiency. It's still a concern. At one point during the first half, someone in the game day thread mentioned that it was at mid-50s%. I think we ended up with 71% disposal efficiency. So, yeah, it's still an issue.
Very early days.
Yes.
Yeah, you've got to be careful, Andy, that it's not at the MFCSS coming out. At some stage during the game, the opposition are going to kick goals easily.
I don't want.
It's about cutting down the numbers, but as Brad Viney just said, it's only a practice game. They're not playing with the intensity that they would during the season, but we can only wait and see. If it's happening in the season proper, then we'll bring the MSCSS out and give it a really good run.
Well, I think we'll end the game talk there because we've got other things we want to talk about. The first thing on the list is the Gawn Captaincy. I'll just got a few thoughts on this that I'll rattle off and then you guys can jump in. I'm wrapped with this appointment. Personally, my family has sponsored Max since he came to the club. We've been with him through 2 ACLs, 6 years in the twos, now 2-time best and fairest, 3-time All-Australian, leadership group and now captain. Personally, I couldn't be prouder. He's a great bloke. He's instantly recognisable by the wider footballing community. He speaks very well in the media. He's great from a branding perspective for the club. He's great. He has a great work ethic. He leads by example. He's just the perfect package for what we want and need in a captain.
Yep.
Great, Viney.
I agree with all that. I've got to say, I couldn't help but feel a little bit sorry for Jack Viney. I know he said he's disappointed and he'll cop it on the chin and move on, and I'm sure that's 100% true, but I would have thought that a part of him would be absolutely devastated. You got a kid who grew up in the club rooms, who's more red and blue than any of us, probably all of us combined. I mean,
he would have dreamed of captaining the club as a kid.
He dreamed of captaining the club. He achieved it, and to have it taken from you would really hurt. And so would the implicit rejection of losing the vote to Max. So it's a bit to deal with, but I don't think he'll have any issues sort of getting over it. But yeah, I couldn't help but feel a little bit sorry for Jack in the midst of all that.
George?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I do feel for Jack as well. We don't know the process that went on behind the doors. I hope it wasn't votes alone that caused Max to get the captaincy, because I remember talking to someone many years ago who said, if you're a young player who came into a club like Melbourne today, let's say like Luke Jackson or a Cozzy, who are you going to vote for? Or someone that you know, or someone who's a good leader? You don't know who the good leader is, so they vote for someone they know. So I hope it wasn't on votes alone. I hope the coaching group had a more substantial input into it as well. But just as equally, I'm I'm comforted by the comments that Gawn made when he said that Viney was elected captain a couple of years ago, where Viney said to him, "You and me have to take this club forward." And now Max has gone back to Jack and said exactly the same thing to him, that both of them are the ones who have got to take this club forward. So I certainly hope that that's the case, and Jack isn't too disappointed, particularly in a year when he is due for contract renewals.
Big man, anything to add to that?
I echo the all of the sentiments I too sort of felt for Jack. I was really surprised. I thought they wouldn't demote him because of the impact on him. I think it's actually real positive that they did, because it shows some courage. That particularly, the last couple of years, there's been a few things where there's been some, alleged or rumoured disagreements between the playing group and the coaching group. So I think that they handled it pretty well. I like the fact that they went for a leadership group of only 2, because for me it maybe mitigates against the impact a little bit on him, because he's one of only 2 leaders, not one of, like Brisbane have got 9 or something ridiculous.
Brisbane have 9, Carlton's got 7.
Yeah, so, and I do think he's not he doesn't strike me as a natural people person, certainly not like Max is. And I wonder whether it'll be better for his footy where he's, his on-field leadership is where he is a great leader. And I thought he played great on the weekend, and which would have been, he had to step up after knowing he would have. Was it announced then? It wasn't announced, was it? But he would have known at that point.
I'm sure he would have known.
I think it had been rumoured, or the leak had come out that it was about to happen.
And they might have done that deliberately, just to soften the blow for him, to give everyone time to digest it. But I actually think that it might be good for him. He takes away the distraction of the off-field stuff. Max will take that sort of stuff in his stride. Max gets around big groups of players, I think, where he can just go out there and do what he's been sort of implicitly criticised for, which is being a bit myopic, and take that energy and just put it into his footy. So heaven forbid some of the opposition players will get tackled this year if that's his sole focus.
Yeah, look, I think for a captain, you got to be the whole package, and it's not just that on-field leadership, but it's that off-field as well. You're the face of the club, and I never thought that Jack sort of presented well in the media, and that's not everyone's an orator. So, but Max is he's very good in front of the media, and I think you need to have that sort of a well-rounded. You have to have all those hats on, and I think Gawn sort of ticks all those boxes for me. So I'm quite happy with it. I was never a fan of the co-captain model. I can't even put my finger on why that is. But perhaps I've just been accustomed to having a single captain. And I'm actually surprised that they decided to do that. I thought sort of the coaching group, of Goody in particular, liked that co-captain thing. I think it was him that started it. Started it with the in this era. I mean, we've had the co-captains before, but he put Viney in with Jones. So. Yeah, I was surprised they went that way. In terms of the, not having any other people in the leadership group, as Bin Man mentioned, is that a surprise? I know that if you're a leader no matter what. No title's going to change that. We've got Lever down back, Tom McDonald up forward. Nev is there. If you're a leader, you're a leader. But did it surprise you that we went without having named leaders, named leadership group? Great Viney, I'll start with you.
I don't know whether I was surprised. I don't get too worked up about the captaincy model. I know some people have very, very strong views on it, on the different sides. But yeah, for me, it's neither here nor there, as you say. Lever, Nev, they're not going to play any different. And in the same way, Jack's not going to play any different going from captain down to vice. So, yeah, not fussed.
All right, moving on. The To Hell and Back documentary series. When this series was first announced, I really didn't know what to think. I saw the title, To Hell and Back, And I'm sure I'm not the only one to have prejudged it and thought, to hell and back, when have we come back? We're not back. I'm still in hell. I had a brief stint out of hell for a few weeks in a row back in 2018, but if I'm back anywhere, I'm back in hell. And I think a more apt title might have been, The Road Back from Hell, as that seems to be the narrative that they're going with. But obviously that isn't as hashtagable. To Hell and Back sort of has a nice ring to it. But many in the media sort of, before they even saw it, had also judged it, in particular Kane Corns, that we haven't come back from anywhere. But obviously, with the narrative they're going with, that's, really doesn't have anything to do with us being back. It's about coming back and what we're doing to come back. I also imagine that we'd get a lot of slow-mo training videos, set to the Rocky music, and a montage of shots running on the beach interspersed with shots in the gym. I certainly wasn't expecting to get emotional watching Jonesy pouring his heart out, So I think they've done a fantastic job in the 3 episodes that we've seen so far. It's very well produced, and I love the narrative that they're telling. George?
Yeah, it's been a fantastic series. It was interesting prior to the annual general meeting the other week. I had an opportunity to talk to Gary Pert for 5 minutes, and he was asked about that, exactly the Hell and Back series, and he said it would never happen at Collingwood under any circumstances. They'd never get that sort of access to the football department during the season or the pre-season, but as a series it's been fantastic. The Age today is reporting that Eddie and co are trying to set up a similar sort of program with Amazon, and using half a dozen clubs to get that sort of access. Whether that happens or not, we're yet to find out. But the good thing is we've already done it, and I've been so impressed with what it actually shows us, the fans, what pre-season training is like. You can go down and see it, but not everybody can. And then you see that session that they were doing at Port Melbourne and down on the beach. You really, really start to understand what these guys are going through. The sessions with Jonesy, the pre-draft meeting with the group down at Goodwin's holiday house at Rye. The insights have just been fantastic, without actually giving anything away. But it just puts everything in such a great light from the club's perspective, especially for a team that finished 17th. So we as fans need that sort of reassurance that something is happening, and I think we've seen it in this series. It's been great.
It's interesting. George mentioned Eddie and Amazon. Amazon had done a whole series of docos in Europe with soccer clubs, so Premier League and some of the other European giants. I think Juventus have done one, Leeds United. Sunderland did one in a year where they actually got relegated. So, these things can bounce back on you. And as you say, Andy, it was a very well produced. I'd imagine it's obviously been outsourced because the production is A1. It's a top shelf production. The content is compelling for the most part, and I think it's probably the first time where I've ever really engaged with, I guess, promotional material, you'd call it, from the club. I usually steer a million miles from things like that, but I noticed that the third episode, or the most recent episode, which came out, was 17 minutes long, and it went by in a flash.
Yep.
And that's good television when that happens.
I've been very critical of the club's communication and fan supporter engagement in the last few years, and I couldn't be more impressed and agree with all of those comments. I think fan engagement is just a critical thing for any club, but particularly one that's publicly said they want to get to 75,000 members, and we're currently at 50. on Demonland, I've posted about a few times about sort of the need to connect with, say, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, 15-year-olds. My son's in that range, and he's an avid basketballer, and he has not shown a skerrick of interest in football for the last 3-4 years. It's all been basketball this and basketball that. And I came home from work today, and he was watching the Hell and Back number 3 because of the training, because he's into his training, and he was seriously impressed and engaged with it. And that's exactly what you need. You know, people need content. Young people need content. The way they sort of access and consume media now, it's all content driven. Like YouTube is television now for kids my son's age. So I think they've done it really cleverly. And the title was I put on Demonland is that, you know, I think it was they obviously worked it out and thought, well, what's going to get the most, you know, what's going to get some whacker like Kane Corns making a comment before he's even seen it. So, you know, we have got so much press from that. And then, of course, because it was good, then people were watching it, and everything's been positive about it since. And I think that the episodes have just got better and better.
Yeah, they certainly have. I was going to just look up on YouTube to see what the numbers were, but really the content's been great. All the training stuff's fantastic. The emotional stuff with Jonesy sort of contemplating his future and whether he goes on at all. Watching the Vandenberg story. He's played 7 games in 3 years, and you know, everyone's sort of rooting for him. That awkward meeting with Harley Bennell when he was meeting the top brass. Them calling him up and him accepting. Them accepting him. The discussing of the draft pick was fantastic, and I think George, you mentioned that they didn't give anything away, but I think they might have. If you remember when we interviewed Jason Taylor, he wouldn't sort of give away sort of who they were looking at, and I think this they inadvertently gave away who they were looking at,
screen. And
in what order, the computer screen. But I don't think they realised that. And if you go onto Demonland, there's a thread sort of detailing that. So that's good reading. And just that grueling pre-Christmas training session, and ending with like the boys getting Cozzy over the line in doing those backwards crab walks or whatever, was just fantastic.
Just a couple of you mentioned Vandenberg, the bit about Vandenberg. I was amazed at I've got no idea of elite level rehabilitation, but some of the stuff that he was doing, like the rubber band thing on his toe,
yep.
And, the work that he must have done for the last 2 years in rehab, like that's the sort of thing behind the scenes thing that it's really interesting, because I mean, psychologically, his sort of effort to put up with that for 2 years and still do it is incredible, and it's great to see that sort of aspect.
Because all we see as supporters is that we see last year in pre-season he's not training. Where's Vandenberg? When's he back? Then we see him on the injury list, his name on there, and it's indefinite or whatever, but we don't know what's actually going on. We don't know that he's got these big elastic bands and he's putting them through between his toes, and we don't see that. The massage therapy, getting right into his foot, and we don't see any of that. So to have that sort of documented now and seeing, and getting back onto the field and playing is just fantastic. And let's hope he can get a full season out of him.
He's like a new recruit. He comes back and plays 15, 16 games. He's like better than a new recruit because he's a ready-made AFL footballer who makes us a better football team. And, that's what you want from a player in, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. That was all the notes that I had. But George, you sent through some notes. The 3-year strategic plan. I don't have it in front of me. I'm going to pull it up now.
It was mainly this is obviously what was presented at the AGM and in the various media groups about the plan from 2020 to 2023 to play finals, both for the men's side and the women's side, and to win one premiership for at least in that period for both of those sides. I was just interested to hear other people's comments about that and the projections. When I first heard it at the AGM, you've got to be sceptical about these things. But then I do recall, I think it was 5 years ago, Richmond came out with their plan for 75,000 members and 3 premierships in the next 10 years or something like that. I can't remember the exact items of it. And guess what Richmond have done? And you sort of look and go, yeah, if you're really going to be serious about competing in this competition and competing for premierships, then you better set it as a target for yourself. So I think initially Pert and Glenn Bartlett said at the meeting you can expect a lot of flack about this, given that Melbourne's coming from position number 17 on the ladder. But I think people have realised, and particularly our own supporters and those on Demonland, that this is perhaps exactly what we've been missing the last couple of years. We've got to be serious about winning premierships in this competition, not just being part of it. So happy to hear other people's position as well.
Look, it's a ballsy thing to do, but I agree with you. You got to put it out there, because if you don't have a goal to work towards, then you're going nowhere. So look, I'm happy that they've put it out there, but I want to see us, what are you going to do to get us there? That's what I want to see. Proof is in the pudding. I've wanted all those ambitions have been my ambitions from the day I started supporting them, but I don't have the ability to do anything about it. So, yeah, let's hope they can do it. And look, that the 75,000 members, that'll come if you have success, I think. You'll see this year we'll lose a lot of the members that we gained after the 2018 year, and that's just a fact. If you don't perform on the field, you're not going to get the people through the doors.
I applaud the club. Good on them, and there's it can only be a positive thing that I think that they're putting it out there. Good for the club. Good for Goodwin. I think we've got a strong list. I think it's, we should be expecting to win a flag in the next 3-4 years. That 100% should be a real thing. And why shy away from it? Why not say that that's what we want to get? I think that the other good part of it was sort of controlling that media narrative. So we've had sort of a block of 3-4 weeks where there's been a huge amount of, stuff about Melbourne in the media. So, and so it was timed well. And I don't think, outrageous claim. Like, it wasn't nearly as ambitious as Richmond's strategic plan, which was 5 years, I think.
Grapevine, anything to add with that? Nope. Agree with what's been said, and I don't pay too much attention to the strategic plans, but you need them in place, I guess. So.
I think Andy, the other good thing about what they've done, and I've heard heaps of and been involved in all sorts of corporate strategic plans and objectives and things like that, and there a lot of them are a lot of waffle, quite frankly. But the thing that strikes me about this one, and Bin Man hit it on the head when he said it's ballsy. Gary Pert and Bartlett and the board have put them, and the coach as well, has put everybody's balls on the line and said, we're going to do this. If they don't, that's it for them. So it's really encouraging and refreshing to hear from people who are prepared to put their own roles on the line to achieve this target. So I think that's been a big change from what we've seen in the past, where people are happy just to go along, and if we win something, well, that's great. Well, these guys are really putting everything out there right from the start, so that's encouraging as well. It sends a great message to the rest of the staff, the players, and the supporters ultimately. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, we will. The last topic I guess we'll talk about is Harley Bennell. We've signed him up from the last time we were on the air. an article this week came out. The club's not expecting him to play until mid-year, and I think that's all sort of we can expect for that. He had that little setback early on, and George, you've been down to training, and what we've read from Baghdad Bob in his training reports, it seems that he's just doing sort of some light jogging, bit of a walking, and it might be a little bit of a while until we actually see him playing, but certainly an exciting prospect if he can get fit.
Yeah, he's an interesting one, and I think we spoke about this last November when we got together. It was almost like a no risk situation for the club. We weren't desperate for players. We had a whole series of players who were coming back. He was someone who was obviously very talented, but had never been able to get on the track for whatever reason in the preceding couple of years. We had nothing to lose. If it didn't work, then we could draft someone else. And certainly that opportunity was available to us right up to March. The interesting thing with Bennell is, again, having seen the Hell and Back series, when you go down to training, you don't see all that much. He's doing a few jogs up and down. He kicks a few goals around the corner, and it looks impressive on Instagram and Twitter and things like that. It'd be interesting to know what's actually going on in the background. When having seen someone like Vandenberg, who only makes it out on the track once a week, but in fact for the other 6 days of the week is spending an awful lot of time in the background, doing an awful lot of work. So I hope that's the case with Harley as well. I would expect it would be, given that the club has now stuck their neck out for him. The other interesting thing was, I'm no medical person, but I read that the operation that Harley had to alleviate his calf problems has been done on a number of athletes. And someone, I don't remember the names or the individual who was working at AIS, said they had a Diamond League athlete who, after the operation, was back running after 9 weeks. Well, if Harley had these operations late last year, we're sort of only just at the 9-week stage. So our expectations of where he should be at are probably too high. If he's just starting running now, then definitely we won't see him until mid-year, because he's got to go through a pre-season effectively the same as everybody else of about 2 or 3 months. And effectively also he hasn't played for 2 years, so he's coming off a really, really low base. But if this one works, it's going to be fantastic for us. So we can only wait and see. We can get a little bit excited about it if it works.
Yeah, I can only imagine the roar on the G if he gets up and takes the field. It'll be fantastic. All right, boys. I think we're going to end it here. Bin Man, thank you for joining us tonight. Really appreciate your contributions. Grapeviney, thank you, and George, thank you as well.
Pleasure.
We will be back. We'll be back next week, maybe. If I get down to the game, and George, you're going as well. And
yeah,
Bin Man,
yeah,
you can join us too and talk about it. If there's anything interesting to talk about, we'll come back next week. Otherwise, we definitely will be back after the next Marsh Series game in Tasmania. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Go Demons.
Go those days.